Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the session. I'm David Friedlander with Docker. I'm just the MC for the room today for the track. I've also had the pleasure of preparing with the customers, preparing their sessions. So I'm very familiar with the story you're about to hear from Tele2. It's one of digital transformation, as similar to many other customer stories. So with that, I would just like to welcome Dennis and Greg to the stage to tell you more about what they're doing. Gentlemen.
Thanks, David. Welcome everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining this session. We are very excited and happy to be on stage to share our stories that we've been through at Tele2. First, I would like to introduce ourselves a bit. It's Greg. He's the technical architect at Tele2. He has been fundamental for our journey and building the Docker platform. He is, for my guys at infrastructure, the go-to guy whenever they want to we'll talk to about development. And myself, I'm Dennis. I'm responsible for the infrastructure at Tele2 together with my team. A bit about Tele2. Some of you may know the company, but we are a big telecom provider. We are present in 8 countries. We are serving 70 million customers throughout those countries, and we work with 3,500 employees. We think that a connected life is a better life. So basically, we are aiming to make connectivity increasingly more available to all our customers in those countries. A bit of history: Tele2 Group was founded by Jan Stenberg. And he was famous, and he had a credo saying that he wanted to demolish monopolies, and also he was a real he was the guy that said we will do the stuff that other people thought to be impossible, and basically that's what we did with our Docker journey, right?
Yeah.
No, but kidding. I think it's really important for all those countries that the people that work at Tele2, they like to challenge things. There's a real challenging spirit. It's deep within our DNA, and I think everything that we do, that we also have done during the journey, is we want to do stuff. We set ambitious goals. We want to do stuff differently, challenge each other, and we are not afraid to take risks in doing so to stay ahead of the competition. Also, with these key values, we attract the best people in the telecoms industry, and we also make sure that we retain those. And also, and this is especially interesting with our journeys, that we would like to use technology to help us to be an efficient and cost-effective telecoms provider. And so one step further, a bit on the Netherlands, where we are located. We have a couple of offerings. We offer mobile and fixed voice and broadband, and on top of that, we have connectivity provided to business, and also have global IoT solutions. And basically, our key assets is our the 4G only network that we've built over the last couple of years, and our own fiber networks throughout the country. We compete in a quite competitive market where we've been the 4th mobile provider in the Netherlands, together with T-Mobile, KPN, and Ziggo Vodafone, and together with a couple of virtual network operators, we really do compete. And in order to stay competitive, we draw up a couple of goals. First of all, especially in the consumer business, we needed to make sure that we will be the fun, rebel mobile challenger. It's a big mouthful, but we needed to meet market demands, and we needed to help our business make sure that we are agile. Together with making sure that we transformed our networks and IT to be more reliable, and also reduce the running costs. And some of you may know, but before we had a logo saying "Born to be cheap," and that's not something that we wanted to continue on. We needed to provide more quality, and we also needed to make sure that we become more innovative, right?
Yeah.
And not to say the least, we wanted to have engaged personnel and have the most happy customers. And all to give the digital first user experience. So it's quite obvious. I think a lot of it has been said in other breakout sessions as well. But was it easy? Did we see some challenges?
Yeah.
Well, yes, we did. I think what is most interesting to note, and I've heard it a lot, is that we were traditionally quite a traditional, from an infra point of view, infra provider. So what we see in the last couple of years that the demand from development was increased. They wanted to have more infrastructure. It needed to be more fast. And what we see at the same time that our backlog was really growing, and it really couldn't keep up with the pace. And on top of that, we were also becoming a bottleneck for the development guys. They were way too dependent on us. That all together lead to the fact that we weren't able to deliver with speed both software and infrastructure. And although we had changed the way that we were working, so we also adopted the agile way of working, we also were still missing a lot of automation there. So, yeah.
And as Dennis mentioned, Tele2 used to be cheap, and that resulted in our landscape, our infrastructure, our applications, and the way we develop software to be quite legacy. We had applications that for us were 20 years old, and it might not be old for some people in the room, but in telco, really competitive market where we need to compete every day, it was old, and it was really hard to maintain them, upgrade them, add new functionality and features. On top of that, we implemented Agile, and the process was a 3 weeks sprint cycle delivering software to production, but all in one big bang. So if one application failed to release or they had a bug in it, the whole thing just fell apart. We had to fix it in the night and make sure the release happened or roll it all back if even possible. And that had to change because it's an unsustainable situation for developers to work with, for a company to have at their core of their business. So we had to look at a platform to change that. So we looked into containers, into Docker, to actually see if we can do this. And indeed, and I will add to that a bit later in the presentation, it proves, or it showed us that building a proper Docker Enterprise Swarm setup, it gives you so much out of the box. It, for us, gave scalability, it gave the uptime of containers and geo-redundancy and all kinds of other nice things that with every application the teams were asking, and we needed to redesign and build it every time again and again. Also, it helps developers think about how to build things in separate blocks. It's a container, one responsibility, one task, separate the concern, make sure that you can test it separately, and make sure that the impact eventually to the customer is less. If one container dies, one functionality dies, and not an entire application or a monolith goes down. Also, the Docker platform would give us a faster time to market. We can build a proof of concept without having to build infrastructure for it because it's already there, the platform is there. So they can spin up a few containers, show the business, hey, is this what you really wanted us to build? Will that solve your problem? And if so, yes, then let's put it in production. So it made us also change the way we think about our infrastructure, how we develop software, and how we can, well, actually do it better. So how did our Docker journey look thus far? So in March 2017, we started the Digital First Initiative, and we took our primary sales platform, so our mobile platform where we sell the cell phones and the subscriptions. And for us, that's the important system. If that one goes, we can just go home. We have no income. So we needed to succeed and we needed to do it well. The platform was out of date, huge customization, so we couldn't upgrade it anymore. It had no tests at all. It was all manually, no automation around it. And when that project started, they asked me to come aboard and actually look at containers and if that could solve their problems and actually answer the questions on the previous slide. A month in the project, I built a proof of concept to showcase, indeed, yes, the answer is it will help you. It will solve a lot of your problems. And I built a lot of templates around so the team can also benefit from all the knowledge I gained in that month. And with that proof of concept, I actually went to the infrastructure guys and asked them, "Oh, can you help me out? Can you build this for me?"
Yeah, and I can still vividly remember that Greg was showing up next to me with the guys on my team and asking if they could help him with setting up an environment so he could go any further. But we didn't anticipate for this. We didn't know it was happening, so that was quite interesting. And at not very long after, we said, well, he's an enthusiastic guy, so he was there and pushing. So we helped him up. We created a few user stories and we started building. And not so long ago, after that, he came back. But now he was together with the project manager and asking when this production environment would be ready. Well, that was quite a challenge. It was even more interesting because we, not so long before, had turned down another development group who also wanted to go with containers and said that we were not able to do it because we didn't have the time. But okay, we went on and it was very clear that you wanted it. And after some, we also needed to convince our group strategy, because they weren't that amused that we were going to build the stuff in the Netherlands, hosted in the Netherlands, because they were more thinking about using Kubernetes and had wanted us to build the stuff on OpenStack. But we were quite in a hurry. So we eventually we sat down and we said, okay, this will be challenging because it was just about to become holiday season. It was completely new technology to us and there were very, very tight deadlines. But we sat together and we say, okay, we're going to do this, right? I said, we like to do challenges. We like to set ambitious goals. And basically, I think from July onwards, we also worked more on the design. We got help we reached out for customers, Docker customers, to ask them how they did it. We got great help from Amazic, and they helped us validating design. So we started building the stuff from that moment on, based on the design.
Yeah, indeed. And then in September, we actually, finished the design. We met all the requirements from all the various stakeholders in Tele2, and we had our first swarm ready that potentially could do a production workload.
Yeah.
And of course, it was not easy to do this. And further on in the presentation, we'll go into the depths of all of this. And our first success on the Docker platform was in December. So just before St. Nicholas, a famous holiday in Holland, we went live with the web shop, and it was really a huge success. The business was really excited. They wanted more of this. And of course, until today, we haven't stopped our Docker journey. We have achieved many, many successes. So around the consumer business applications, we continued. So, for instance, the My Tele2, Ideal Payments, a lot of other applications have moved to Docker, moved to microservice architecture, and we're expanding.
Yeah, I think we really did cool stuff there.
Yes.
We pulled it off. It was challenging, but under 6 months we were able to have this from an idea, you showing up, to a design, and have it actually running in production.
Yeah.
So,
but it was not easy.
It was not easy, but it was fun. And so,
one back.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So was it a bumpy ride? Yes, we hit a lot of stuff. As I told you, right from the start, we saw that the project that was asking basically for this platform didn't anticipate of having resources at infrastructure. They even had issues with the budget, and also we didn't plan for it. So we really needed to make sure that we did a difference. So at some point we really dedicated guys to work on this. And also what I think is interesting to share with you is that there were a lot of uncertainties, of course. There was new technology. We started to draw a long list of things that we needed to think of, what was important, discussions with you, Greg, quite a lot. But also, and I heard that also before, I call it back home the old school silo thinking. Where we come from a more traditional infra provider where there was not that much freedom for our developers to work with the infrastructure, we really needed to take that to another level. We were the thing that we talked about was that, well, the guys from development, they will ruin the stuff, they will not care about security and all this kind of stuff. But once we got that sorted out, I think we really move forward when we really start to cooperate together, right?
Indeed, yeah. And the same was on the technical level. We have security, we have ops, and all these different stakeholders that were throwing non-functional requirements at us, stating like, if you build this platform, you need to think about this, and it was quite a long list. It was quite hard to convince them and show, yes, a Docker platform can be secure and we can do this. We can ensure that containers can't talk to each other when we don't want them to talk to each other. Yes, we can build a platform that's geo-redundant if an application lands on it out of the box. And that for us was a hard struggle to do that. And a lot more of these points, we're going to break it down into 4 bits. We're going to talk on how we actually solved a lot of these challenges. So on the technical, for me, one of the most important things I had for the development teams was the templating. So building a delivery street with CI/CD, showing how to use containers, when to spin up a stack for testing and how to do that efficiently and think about the process to stop them from reinventing the wheel over and over again. And then also enabling the managers of measuring the quality of the deliveries of the team. How far are they in using the right tools and the right principle of how to deliver software. That really helped for us, and they're still using it, they're expanding on it, and yeah, I really like that bit in the process. Another technical thing I'd like to highlight is the base images. We had quite a lot of chats about it, how to solve this. Are we allowing root in that or not? Yeah, well, we decided not. It's not secure. The security officers wouldn't allow it. How to do the versioning. Do you use latest or not? Well, in the development area or the testing stages, yes, of course, it's quite easy to use latest and quite efficiently. But in production, you want to see what's running. So for us there, we explicitly use the tags so we know what version they are, we know what tests they ran against and all these things. And for us, we also chose explicitly not to use the hub. We need to manage our own base images so we can apply hardening. We can make sure they're secure. We can stuff things in like our root CA so the teams don't have to do that over and over again, and make sure there is a user in there so that they don't run as root and all of these things. On a process level, there was also a shift between how it used to be and how it will become. Because in the old days, Dennis's team was responsible for production and everything in production. So the VM as well as the application. And there was an ops team that was responsible for making sure that when the application has a hiccup, that they bring it back. We wanted to do more DevOps, so the team needed to be empowered. The team needed to be owner of their application. So with the Docker platform, we shifted that. We had the capabilities to shift that, empower the team, and make them owner of this. To train the teams how to do that, we had to use a very proactive approach to show them when they have a problem, when they don't know how to do something around their application, to show, okay, this is how you do that in Docker, this is how you do that on the platform very efficiently, so that they actually see like, oh yeah, this is something I want to use, and that they get enthusiastic and that they stay using it. Eventually, this formed for us a sort of knowledge tribe that could also make sure the teams stay on the latest philosophy, so to say, use the latest best practices from our own company. We also use that to just do a double check when they want to go to production, that we scan through their repository, see if all the dots are on the I, so to say, and if they can actually not cause impact to other things in production.
Yep. Yeah, and from a project perspective, as I told before, it was quite a surprise that we were going to do this. So at the moment, we looked each other in the eyes to say this will be challenging, and I'm still happy I did that back then. As we said, before we're going to build anything, because if you looked at the values at Tele2, action is one of those. We said, we're going to first do a design before we're going to start build anything. So it took us quite some time to discuss and again talk to other customers, talk to partners to make sure that we had a design that was okay. That was okay and agreed on before we started moving. And the same goes for all the stuff that we came up with during the discussions, the plan that we need to make. So we just put a whole long list of all the activities, we prioritized them, and based on that, we started working. What I also, and I said it before, don't try to do the stuff yourself. We had great help for the development guys from the Magento, because that was the first workload that we put on our Docker. And they also needed to start working with Docker. And amazing, they helped us with validating our Ceph design, the whole Docker design. We talked about the distributed cluster, etc. Also, what I think has been very important is that we're only a small team that needed to pull this off. We knew that there will be issues, technical issues that we would run into. So together with the project manager and you and the other guy, we said, whenever we're going to hit into any trouble, I don't want people to start pointing at each other and saying and blaming and escalating that it won't work, because we will run into this. And I think still, that we had our fair share of challenges, but we always, because it was a team goal, worked to get it working. And I think that was really great. Long list of stuff ranging from capacity management, monitoring, how we do technical stuff. We put that just on a backlog. So I would advise anybody of you that didn't start this, just make a backlog. We still aren't finished with our backlog. We still are improving on the current platform, but it helps you to prioritize stuff and make sure that you will move forward. Yeah, and do it together.
Definitely.
Yeah, so at some point, the guys, I dedicated 2 guys in my team that weren't, they didn't need to worry about all the other info stuff. So they sat together with the development guys in a separate space and worked together to achieve the results.
Together. Yeah. Also, as mentioned before, we really had to break old habits. Tele2 as an organization had to change. And for us, it really helped to get that small core team going, to get velocity, to get momentum, to bring results fast, and to show that we can do change and sort of isolate them from all the policies and everything they should care about, but not now. We also had the benefit of using a really big impacting application. So we could show the entire company that it will work for simple stuff as well. We went big and we got the momentum, we got the wow factor, and now everybody wants to use it. Not that fun. Now you have to work a bit more. And we also we changed that core team changed the way we worked from Scrum to more Kanban style to actually DevOps, because the operation team and the development teams were really working together to deliver something that works for the customer.
Yeah.
And during the entire journey, we had to stay open. We had to communicate to different stakeholders, the other ops teams, the security teams, many others, to show what we were doing and that we're actually thinking also of their requirements as well. So what does our current Docker platform look like? We as a telco have the advantage, so there's one thing to notice, that we have our own data centers. So we have 2 in Amsterdam and 1 in Zwolle, and we built stretch clusters on top of that. That's not normal Docker advice, because if your latency is too high, the masters won't be able to communicate to each other and you will have trouble. We can ensure that the latency is low enough. So we have a platform that if you spin up 2 containers and you spread them, it's geo-redundant, which was one of the requirements we wanted out of the box. So we don't have to build multiple clusters to achieve geo-redundancy. That was a great benefit for us. We put our primary workloads in 2 of the data centers because they're even closer together, and that's where only the applications run. So some numbers to make it more concrete of what we're running. So currently, throughout all the swarms, we're running about 1,700 containers. That includes the management things, monitoring, and all these type of stuff. Around our platform, because one of the things we haven't solved really is state. All the containers are running stateless, and because we didn't find a storage solution that was for us enterprise ready enough, we agreed with everybody to put their state outside of the container. So we built object storage in Ceph, we built Elasticsearches around it, RabbitMQs, Redishes, Perconas, to actually move the state out. And we built them in the same way as clusters and with Puppet and all these things to manage them. So that's not in Docker. When we get a state, we'll probably look into this as well. Around that, we have some normal Docker engines running Jenkins, Docker next to Docker solution. So they're building our images, and we have a Prometheus Grafana solution to actually monitor everything. They're separate because if you build on a swarm, all the image versions go a bit haywire, so that's why we did it like that. And one of the interesting things to notice in the previous slide actually was the Jenkins has a small Windows flag. And that's where our test cluster is looking into. We're really actively looking into a lot of our legacy applications that are running on Windows, if we can move them. Some legacy is DCOM, it's Windows file shares, or they're heavily tied to Office tools, and if we can move them. And also some of the teams, they're so used to developing in .NET and on Windows that it's a bit hard to force them to move to .NET Core and Unix and all these things. So managing the knowledge of your teams and your developers and what you hire is also something to consider into the platform you build. So that's why we're actively looking into this as well. But so, what did we gain out of that?
Yeah, what did we gain out of all the hard work? It really
it really changed us.
Yeah, it really changed us. Sorry. What I said, we were struggling with the way we were delivering infrastructure, and the Docker platform really made us rethink that. Also, the way we cooperated with our customers, so the development guys. So already in the project, we were working much more closely together, and that still continues up till now. And also, when we were nearly finishing the project, we saw that this journey would not stop, and that we, as an infrastructure provider, should also work in a different way, and had dedicated guys in this case for the development teams to help them setting up new infrastructure, help them making use of containers and Docker. Yeah. So from that moment on, we also started to have a new role in my team, which we call the advisory. It's a consultant. It's an infra consultant that helps out other teams and is dedicated to do so. And that is something that we wouldn't have had if we wouldn't
work together.
And if we wouldn't have the Docker platform.
Exactly. Yeah.
Delivery, well, that's obvious. Instead of being a bottleneck for the development guys in delivering stuff, they are able to do a lot of stuff themselves. So, and actually with this, we as an infra team, we have been providing the first platform as such. So that has also been very good. Yeah. Well, mentioned a couple of times, I can't say it often enough, really working together, make sure that teams are dedicated to work on the same goal, have dedicated time for it, and make sure it will be a success. And it also, at the moment that people start working together side by side, having the same goal, so in this case, having Magento Live, based on containers, they will not start pointing at each other and say, yeah, well, it's not my thing. You need to figure out. Yeah. It really helped us. As I mentioned in the beginning, we had a lot of challenges. And one of the things that we would like to achieve was that we would have the happiest customers, right? And that we would be more innovative and improve on quality. Well, you can see it if you measure the NPS on our mobile business line, that it really has been improving over the last 1.5 years. A lot of things is done in the consumer department, of course, but we see that moving the consumer applications, the apps towards the Docker platform really gave us the advantage and a better quality. And also worth mentioning is that as probably some of you also experience, is that getting the right people in nowadays, especially engineering, is really hard and tough job. So with the Docker technology, we were able for the last year to really attract people. So whenever I had people at my table that we want to hire or recruit, whenever we start talking about the Docker stuff that we are doing and the journey that we made, people were, well, sort of enthusiastic from that moment on, and we could get them aboard. Yeah. And the same goes for the people that were already working in the team. They really had a new challenge, a new technology they could work on.
So what's next for us in Tele2? Yeah, there's a lot more. So besides our consumer mobile, we have Tele2 Television running proof of concepts on our Docker swarm. We have wholesale department and business department that are already running projects to move their legacy application, breaking it apart into microservices and containers and letting them land on our platform. And so literally everything that we can stuff in a container over time, we want to put there. We want to also diminish the backlog we still have, do things with the monitoring a lot more so we can see if the teams actually apply the latest and greatest standards that we have for them. And of course, we want to get our first success with the Windows applications. We want to move some of those old ones that are hard to maintain and put them into containers so it becomes a lot easier for the ops guys to keep them running, to keep them live.
Yeah, and where we have become, when we have put in infra guys that are had an advisory role, we will continue that as well. Yeah. Because we, with the new platform, we what we call it is we've become a trusted IT infrastructure advisor for the other teams, and we will continue delivering platforms and associated tooling to developers, so they have more freedom to do the stuff that they need to do. And where we had lots of discussions before on DevOps in Tele2, we have been talking about it for 1.5 years. Yeah. Now DevOps. I think this really, the Docker platform really provides a really natural means to work like this. Exactly. So whenever it's possible and wherever it is possible nowadays, we continue that and we work in the DevOps way. And also, I think worth mentioning is that when we started the project, I said that there was a lot of old school silo thinking. The guys at my team were afraid that we would have guys ruining systems, etc. So that really also helped us to start think in a different way about infrastructure, but also engage with all the guys around us with development, but architects, solution design as well, that they need to think in a different way about infrastructure. So now they have the means, they can do a lot more themselves, but it also means that they need to be more into the infra side, and they need to be more responsible, accountable for doing stuff. That's still a challenge because sometimes that this doesn't work, but we did that on purpose and make sure that they had the room to do that. And also, instead of us from a past perspective, make sure that when stuff breaks, infra is there to solve it. They now need to think from design to make sure that they develop software as well that is capable of handling infrastructure not being available anymore.
And not a point to miss. So our title was subtitle was a journey to the cloud, and we're actively looking into that as well. We want to have the opportunity to scale out workloads to our cloud provider that we're using, Azure, so that if we do an Apple sale, for instance, and we hit peak loads, that we can actually handle them, and anticipate them as they go. We want to look into other platforms and SaaS solutions and PaaS solutions that clouds offer us, so that we don't have to build them ourselves, and that we can really provide a platform for the developers where they can pick whatever they need for their requirements to be met. And yes, as I mentioned before, the Windows containers, we really want to get that done. Yeah.
Yep.
So that really brings us to the end of our presentation. So if you have any questions for us, don't hesitate to ask them. If you later want to get into contact, our emails are on the screen. I see a question up front.
Yeah, thank you. And just a quick note, you can certainly please rate the session in your mobile app, and feel free to follow up. We'll have a few minutes after you can come up and talk to them as well. So here, go ahead.
You mentioned you have 3 hosting centers, and you migrate your containers between them. What kind of tools do you use to orchestrate Docker?
So we use Swarm at the moment, and we're upgrading to the newer versions of the UCP and the DTR to then also have the option of Kubernetes, because some vendor products, they come with Kube and things out of the box. So it might be that some software applications would use both. So then we have both Swarm and Kube to go, but not sure if it will happen. So Swarm now is a lot easier for us. The learning curve it's easier, plus it meets security demands for us. So the opt-out and the opt-in strategy of networking helps for us to keep the containers isolated. So that's why we have Swarm, and that's why we did it like that. And it's just a normal stretch cluster for us. Yeah. Does that answer the question? Cool.
Other questions?
At the beginning of the project, why did you choose Docker EE and not another platform like OpenShift or Rancher?
It was a bit of both, because we had an OpenShift initiative going on in Sweden, but that was spread over 3 countries as geolocations, so it wouldn't meet our requirements out of the box. So it would be in Sweden, Holland, and the Baltics, so we would never be able to make a stretch cluster work. As well, the timelines to get that working was nowhere near. That was one of the fights that Dennis was talking about, discussions of getting that done.
Yeah, and I think when we started, nobody really was, I think, aware of what the difference was between Kubernetes and Swarm. There was all kinds of discussions, and it was more like they wanted to do that. And I think you guys also found out that the Kubernetes was much more difficult to implement, a lot of more issues. So we chose to do Docker and Enterprise.
And the support as well, because for us and a company where we had such a big application, if we, on our first live day, would have had outage, we had the capabilities of calling Amazig or Docker themselves as well, saying, oh shit, we have a problem, and it would be on site to help us out. That also helped with making the case over Kubernetes in that case for us. So, yeah.
Hi, can you tell us a little bit more about the base images? Is it one base image? Is it one team that creates this one and something like this?
Yes, definitely. It started out as one person that sort of led or helped the teams out with that. So we investigated in collaboration with infra and brainstorms on that, but I built most of them between the different versions. So we have 2 layers. So we really have the base space, that's Alpine or a Debian. So we picked Ubuntu. But so everything preferably is Alpine because it's just the smallest. It has the least risk because least moving bits and things in there that you could potentially abuse when they hijack a container or whatever. And on top of that, we provide the second layer, which is then, for instance, Java, it's PHP, it's Python, Node.js, and all these things. In the real base image, we put the user already, our root CA, and all the things. In the next layer, we put the language-specific things in there, and that's what the teams then actually use to build their application in. So for Java, it's literally a Java base, put a jar, Spring Boot Tomcat application in there, and done. So it's really small, it's really lightweight for them as well, so they don't really have to write any Docker files for us anymore. And that's what we're continuing. So every time a new team wants something that hasn't been done in one of these base images, we'll look into their requirements and their demand and we'll construct it together. And eventually the infrastructure team, they're also sitting there, they're helping us as well to build these base images. So some of them will probably help out with the Windows things as well. So yeah, that's how we're tackling that.
Okay, I apologize. We are a little bit over on time already, but feel free to come up and ask them some more questions, and you'll have another session in about 12 minutes. So thank you again, and thank you to Greg and Dennis.